hand back to Sean and she'll tell you
We're
more about
moving up
this
to
evening.
3. So, seems you guys must know me by now. I'm just going to say I'm loved by my husband again and my children. Oh, go on. I can still get that in, yeah? So, we'll just get right into it because I really enjoy having time to chat. So, yeah, today, sports. And like I said, this was a hard subject for me to look into. So I'm going to start by saying sometimes masters raised some of their slaves as prize fighters, and they would tour plantations with them for entertainment and making money. So this is a film to check out. It's Mandingo. It might be 1974. I might have a bit of a mix there in 1975, 74. Check out that movie, and that depicts the tale of what it was like for a slave as a prize fighter. And then there's Bill Richmond here. He's Britain's first black sports star. He's largely unknown, but was one of the most significant sportsmen in history and one of the most prominent celebrities of Georgian times. Born as a slave in Staten Island, Richmond won his freedom as a young boy, and he carved a new life for himself in the UK as a cabinet maker and then a prize fighter and a trainer. His amazing life encompassed encounters and relationships with some of the prominent men in England, including earls and lords and princes. And his fame was such that he fulfilled an official role in the coronation and a celebration of King George IV in coronation in 1821. So in 1837 to 1900, sports in Victorian times was very white and enjoyed by the aristocratic society, which is the gentry of England, and they included badminton, croquet, polio, and hunting for pleasure. Special arrangements were made with the upper classes, so they enjoyed a weekend of sporting. This meant, people who were in jail and were going to court didn't get to go to court over weekends because the gentry had to be sporting. And sporting allowed for men, white men, to showcase their manhood because I don't know if you know about high jinks, where they used to duel with their guns. That was now forbidden because men coming back from war were doing high jinks and just killing people. So the Industrial Revolution in the late 1850s was the beginning of modern day sports. And because people had more leisure time, as they became more affluent and they got to move around more because of the technologies, people got to enjoy a bit more sport. But the rules were still made by white public school boys, and it was dominated by white players until the 1980s and 90s, when more black players got an opportunity to join in. Now there's this book called Playing While White, and it offers a critical analysis of athletic stars as well as predominantly white cultures of NASCAR and extreme sports. There's some good documentaries on Netflix where, I just let someone in. There's some good documentaries on Netflix that depict some of the black faces that have tried to get into NASCAR. Hi. And so David Leonard identifies how whiteness is central to the commodification of athletes and the sports they play. He demonstrated that sports cultures are a key site in trafficking of racial ideas, narratives, and ideologies. With an analysis of a racial dynamic of sports tradition, as varied as football, cycling, hockey, basketball, baseball, snowboarding, and soccer, as well as the reception and the media portrayals specifically of white athletes, he points out that within white supremacist discourse, definitions of leadership center around whiteness and maleness, and that these logics map out directly into the sporting environment. Black athletes are reduced to their athletic prowess rather than to their intellectual processes. Whiteness filters the trash talking by white athletes and condemns that of black athletes. Indeed, sports media linked trash talking to blackness and hip hop culture, an expression of unsportsmanlike conduct and a pollutant that is destroying the sports fabric. On the contrary, white athletes engaging in trash talk were described as free-spirited and passionate and energetic. In short, While black athletes trash talk, white athletes are celebrated for their competitive banter. Oh, just move down here. So, bred for maximum profit. A Harvard and Vanderbilt study and Duke study translated the racially infused stereotypes of the 19th century minstrel stage into which physical traits such as fat lips, wide open red mouths, large noses existed, alongside the perceived innate ability to dance and sing and have athletic bodies. In doing so, these studies produce some of sport's most venerable racist convictions, such as black athletes are more adept to sprinting, they're more relaxed, they make better running backs than quarterbacks, and they jump higher. You all know that white man can't jump. All of this, again, reduced their athleticism to solely a physical condition with no room for intellectual capacity, training, or discipline. Yeah. So Chris Rock, a comedian, he done a tour called Never Scared, and he said how literally black men have been bred for maximum profit since slavery, and that this breeding has created athletic bodies that create maximum profits in sports stadiums as effectively as they once did in cotton fields. Rock's humor riffs about the absurdity of athletes, often seen as potential source of liberty for black men, rely on the best form of human husbandry that was birthed in slavery. Also, a scholar article that I read states in a journal about the American institutes that are built and interconnected, the educational system, the criminal system, the college sports systems, and professional sports leagues. And they use sports as a frame for judging the worthiness of a young black man prior to either rewarding him, controlling him, or destroying him. According to 536, 66% of NFL players are black and 97% of NFL players are white. And a Rolling Stones journalist put this picture, the one where they're measuring the black guy in slavery and the one in the NFL. And can you see that? I hope my screen's not covering that. And he basically says it's like a creepy slave auction vibe, and there's armies of drooling, flesh-peddling scouts. And the NFL allows audience to physically see strong men being bought and sold, much like in a slave auction. If whiteness emerges from the governance of property, as a historian, Nikhil Pal Singh argues, then the policing of blackness has also emerged from the form of black bodies being considered as property. So it kind of shocked me when I saw how deep this goes. And sports has provided a historic framework for perpetuating the social construct of black men as being threatening, menacing public to safety. At the same time, sports have also provided a framework for understanding how to control a black man's body. This framework shares physical, structural, and financial similarities with the institution of slavery. Sport has played a multifaceted role in both enforcing racist beliefs and combating them, sometimes simultaneously from the turn of the 20th century till today. Sporting discourse reflects society's structural criminalization of black athletes while making excuses for the crimes of white athletes. So racism in sport today. You know, my husband was saying, let's look at each sport, but honestly, I looked at hockey, ice hockey, and there's racism in that. I looked at cricket, there's racism in that. And I could go into all the incidences, but there's no point. The racist abuse is racist abuse. In rugby, racism in that. In football, the racism in football in the UK is rising since Brexit. And so my question is why is it tolerated in sport? And the answer is it's not. It's not tolerated in sport on some level. Like the Welsh Rugby Union, they have stated that there's no place for racism in their sport, and they're trying to combat it. And the UEFA have now got a stop play rule And if somebody shouts a racist slur, one of the crowd, they get two chances, which I find was strange. You can abuse someone twice before they stop play, and they stop play for half an hour. And you know, John Barnes is a former Liverpool football player who speaks a lot about this, and he talks about education is the only way. The system has been indoctrinating us for hundreds and hundreds of years on how to think and how to feel. And so he says the only way to change this is to change all of it, you know. So racism is not tolerated in sport, but when you go back to the figures of how many people actually own sport and who's playing where the money and the security is, that's still very much white. You need to take a bit of a breath after learning stuff like that, because of the way we're doing it as well. It's like 10 minutes, boom. There's in the research, there's links in your email after, so you can go deeper into this and take more time as you so desire.